Hi, I'm Fangs. Welcome to the shit show where you can see me, but I can't see you. You're not going to see me on camera for very long since I have some video footage that I need to share. I just wanted to pop in for my intro and my outro, and kind of show off my outfit because I bothered to put in the effort. I bothered to put in the effort for this. I didn't have to. I got the idea for this series because while we all know the very popular bands of the 80s, there are still tons of super underrated ones that I think deserve more love from the goth community. And in case anybody tries to fight me about certain bands being common knowledge or, super well known, yeah, I mean, it's not very hard to find these guys. But also, we should bear in mind that I am 26, I am terminally online with no IRL goth friends, and I am also American. So the conversation of, kind of the peers that I have online and who gets discussed is a little bit different because of these factors. These picks were based on my own observation of the fact that although I do love the Sisters of Mercy and The Cure, it kind of gets a little bit boring when they're the only people that we kind of talk about. So I just decided to bring to the forefront some people that may be lesser known or kind of forgotten, especially to the younger crowd. This is going to be a series that I continue, so there's going to be a lot to talk about in the future, so if you don't see someone mentioned and you think that they should be, you can share that if you want, and I'll do a kind of deep dive and try to include them. This list doesn't have a particular order of how much I like one band over another. I just kind of wrote them down as I remembered they existed and went down the list. This video took a minute since I had to refresh my brain on some of the material that these guys had, but overall it was a pretty great experience. I have great taste. I guess I really didn't need to go down a rabbit hole, and try to figure out, a lot of their history and what these people might be doing now, but unfortunately for the rest of you, I have crippling autism, and I have an intense need for information. So I decided to include whatever I could find out, as well as links you can explore in the description that I thought might be interesting for further reading or support. Anyways, that's enough yapping. I'll get on to the first band.
We're in love, let's be together. Happy times, oh heavy weather. Mother says today's a special day, so let's not fight.
First up, we have the Bolshoi. I have never seen anybody mention these guys, and it is absolutely a crime, because they seem to have been very popular back in the 80s. I found them by accident when I used to use Spotify, and I went down a rabbit hole with them. Per Wikipedia, the band initially formed in 1984 in Trowbridge in Wiltshire in England. The original lineup consisted of singer-guitarist Trevor Tanner, drummer Jan Kalicki, I think I said that right, I don't know, and bassist Graham Cox, with Cox eventually being replaced by Nick Chown. These guys are sometimes hard to pin down stylistically, but I clocked a goth vibe off them immediately. The album from them I would recommend the most is Friends, but Lindy's Party is also good. Away is probably their most well-known song, but I've always especially liked Modern Man and Someone's Daughter. A lot of their lyrics are surreal, and their entire vibe has this weird effect on me, where it makes me feel nostalgic for things and places that I have never experienced, which is a trip that I am choosing to inflict onto other people by mentioning this band. I ended up doing a little bit of a deep dive on them and ended up finding a couple of old Web 1.0 type sites that document them, although I don't think anything has been updated since about 2008 or so. Despite this, there's a whole lot of interesting tidbits like rare recordings and photos that would be hard to find today, but some of the most interesting stuff is provided by Trevor Tanner himself. The way he writes and describes his process on lyric writing reminds me a lot of my older goth friends who used to perform back in the day. And I say this with the most love in my heart. He seems like a very quirky but genuine dude. If somehow you're a non-goth viewer unaware of the kinds of people we have around here, the Venn diagram between people who would have been given violent lobotomies had they been born a few decades earlier and goth musicians is just a circle. And yes, this applies to literally all of them that you can think of, and no, I will not argue with anybody about it because it is absolutely true. Trevor's interview with Fright X in particular is kind of surreal, and my favorite bits from it are him describing that he wrote Waspy about the fact that a wasp stung him in the belly button as a kid, and he has had beef with them ever since. I wasn't even aware of Waspy being on Friends initially because it was apparently removed from the American releases of the album for being too dark, although it's easily accessible nowadays. Another favorite bit that I learned from this interview is that whenever he was asked why he wrote Sometimes I don't know why I say the things I say as a lyric in Auntie Jean. He's just like, 'cause it's true. Which is so damn funny to me, because literally I do the same thing. His full interview is definitely worth a read. To my knowledge, Trevor and Paul have a new project called the Bolshoi Brothers going, which may be worth keeping an eye on for people who enjoy their stuff. So I'll also link that website in the description below.
So far have I traveled to be where you are.
Next on the list we have Malaria, a German band that was formed in 1981 by Gudrun Gut and Bettina Koester. Malaria is one that's sometimes considered more industrial or specifically NDT, but honestly I feel like it's a little too nitpicky to get into category-wise, and I think using broader post-punk works just fine, so I'm not going to get too into specifics. They're one of those bands that explicitly was into the sound of being untrained and inexperienced for the instruments they were playing, which is something that I've always appreciated. As far as vibes go, they kind of give me a early death rock, kind of alien sex fiend type vibe. I don't know if anybody else is picking up on that, but it's what I kind of picked up on, and it's something about them that I appreciate. My favorite song from them is You, and Your Turn to Run is another absolute banger. You can find a lot of their videos on YouTube, and it's a treat for anybody that really likes 80s goth aesthetics, though I can't find very much if it's HD. As far as albums go, they thankfully have some modern compilations out there that have many other songs together, since they didn't really do albums. Compiled 2.0 has remasters and a larger song selection than their initial compilation, so I'd recommend it for that, although both are great. I just can't fucking believe that we got an all-female group of post-punk baddies and yet nobody has a lot to say about them. That is literally my dream. I would kill to be able to play with a group of women, and I think they were ahead of their time in this regard.
She's got a point. She's an icon. She's a legend, and she is the moment. Now, come on now.
I couldn't find much info about what they're currently up to. Gudrun has a podcast episode from The Wire from 2008 that has some of her music, so I'll link that. I also found a 2015 interview with Bettina that has a lot of interesting info from her perspective on the 80s, what the scene was like for women, and what she's up to now that's very insightful. The next band is one of my personal favorites, Asylum Party. If you're familiar with Cold Wave, you probably already know these guys, but I always share them whenever anybody asks me for bands. I'm of the opinion that French Cold Wave is underrated as a whole, and I might eventually do more of a deeper dive talking about it in the future. The band consisted of Philippe Planchon as their vocalist and guitarist, Thierry Sobasic as their bassist and other vocalist, and later Pascal Masse as their keyboardist. My French is hot garbage, so please excuse my likely shit pronunciations of their names. They didn't have a drummer and instead used a drum machine. I think the model for their drum machine was the Roland R8, but I can't find information anywhere on what it actually was, so that's the best guess I've been able to find. Having some experience with the R8 myself, I'm inclined to believe that this could be right, but I'm still not 100% sure about it. My favorite songs from them are Play Alone and Julia. Honestly, these guys have never put out a bad song in my opinion, so it's kind of hard to choose just a few. Picture One is my favorite album. I'm going to talk about the video for Julia for a minute. Okay, so this video to me is peak fucking goth vibes, okay? Hear me out. Right, like, you got sunglasses indoors, you got a dude chilling at the keyboard smoking a cigarette, playing absolutely fucking nothing, he's just aura farming. And then you got the bassist in the back just absolutely vibing his ass off. and his bass isn't even plugged in. The fucking Yamaha logo in the background is probably a sponsorship, but this whole video is just a fucking vibe. It is cinema, and I want everybody to know how much I appreciate this video specifically. I always gravitate towards watching Thierry in the back every time I see this video. A lot of people mention how their drum machine stands out, and it absolutely does, but I appreciate Thierry's bass lines massively. This is a band that I feel like where everybody in it is very musically solid, and it shows. Their songs are scattered across YouTube as fan releases, and you can't find them in many other places, so it can be hard to gather a lot on them, but records and stuff related to them are definitely out there if you know what you're looking for and are willing to dig it up. Thierry passed away in 2019 and has been missed by Cold Wave fans ever since. I'm unsure what other members are doing, but Philippe and Thierry's family have allowed the release of some old songs on vinyl as recently as 2022, and I've considered picking that up myself because it's pretty fucking cool.
Stone head, and he's carved out of clay.
Now we're moving on to Twisted Nerve. They are a Scottish band from Edinburgh, and they're one of those that started out purely punk in the late 70s as the Insults, and then later pivoted to a more post-punk sound during the 80s. Their current lineup consists of Craig Patterson as their vocalist, Norbert Bassbin on bass, kinda ironic for a bass player to be named that, Dunsey Dunsmore on guitar, and Dave Grave on drums. I'm sorry, are their name, is that really his name? Is his name really Dave Grave? Dave Grave from a Goth? Okay. Anyway, I actually ended up finding these dudes by complete accident while working initially on this video. And by that, I mean that the lizard people who spy on everybody decided to throw me a bone in my YouTube algorithm by chucking the entirety of their album Seance at me. Not that I'm complaining because it fucking slapped. It's not a very long album, but the songs are all pretty solid. My favorite song from Seance is Yes Man. I don't know how I didn't know about these guys sooner, since they play often with a lot of other bands that I do know. After snooping around, I found a couple interviews about them that seemed pretty interesting. They don't seriously define themselves as explicitly goth, but are enjoyed by goths and are welcoming towards them and anyone else that might enjoy their stuff. Per the words of their singer Craig, Archive is the best way to experience them, so I definitely check that release out. He's also very proud of Eyes You Can Drown In. Overall, they seem like a cool group of fellas who genuinely enjoy performing, and they're still active to this day, so I'll be keeping an eye on them, and if that piques your interest, you should too. Alright, next up we are heading to Macedonia to check out Mizar. These guys have something of a cult following in their home country, as well as across other countries that were formerly part of Yugoslavia. I'm not gonna lie, I am not smart or cultured enough to even attempt pronouncing their names, and if I try, my Balkan friends are gonna clown the fuck out of me, so I'm just gonna put a card up. Much of their music has themes centered around Orthodox Christianity, folklore, and support for the self-determination of Macedonia. I wasn't initially sure what I expected from them, but they're such a fucking vibe that I ended up listening to as much of their catalog as I could get a hold of after I found them. I don't even fully register the language barrier because they are just that good that it doesn't fucking matter. Vibes transcend language. The religious symbolism isn't for everybody, but if that's something you're into, they're definitely worth checking out. I mean, these dudes have a fucking choir on their stuff sometimes that sings in a traditional Byzantine style, and I don't care what anybody has to say, that conceptually goes hard as fuck. Although for me it's more of a really cool historical quirk than a religious one. One of my favorite songs by them is Blood Red Sun, and that's not just because it's one of the only ones I can pronounce. They don't often drop English lyrics in their stuff, but when they do, it's an absolute treat. The remasters of their self-titled album are great, and their discography is a little bit hard to track down and piece together because YouTube tweaks the fuck out about it, and I can't read or speak Macedonian. But anything I have found is definitely worth the effort in my opinion. The aura these guys have is hard to put into words, but it is very consistent with my experience with post-punk bands that come from that sort of part of the world. I don't know what the fuck it is about Balkan bands or Eastern European bands, but they got some shit going on that I feel like a lot of Western bands don't have. I don't know if it's the touch of, like, communism or what the fuck it is, but whatever it is, it fucking slaps. I need to do a deep dive on bands from the Balkans and Eastern Europe, and some other places, just because there's not a lot of info out about them to Western audiences, often due to language barriers, and all the crazy political shit these places often had going on during the 80s and 90s that kind of drowns a lot of stuff out. I was surprised to find out that these guys are still active and performing and kicking ass, so I'll be checking out more of their stuff. Next, we have another German pick, Belphegor. Per Wikipedia, their members were Michael Klaus, who performed on vocals, guitar, and electronics, Manfred Terstappen, who was on drums and backing vocals, Raoul Walton, playing bass and backing vocals, and Walter Jaeger, who also played bass, but also synth. They formed in 1982 in Dusseldorf, and if you're into new wave, they're a good throwback band. They only put out 2 albums, A Dog is Born in 1983, and their self-titled album in 1984. They also have some neat singles out there. They weren't a very long-lived band and ended up disbanding in 1985 because Klaus was over the rock and roll lifestyle and went off to study medicine, which honestly, valid. He is incredibly he's so real for that. He's just like, fuck this, I'm out. Honestly, iconic. Love that for him. So I don't have very much to say about them as some of the more active bands with more info out there. The album I like from them best is A Dog is Born, and I fuck heavily with their bass lines on it, although I may be biased since I am a bass player. Since I don't have as much material for them, I'm going to talk about the video for All That I Wanted. So let me just say that whatever it is that Klaus did to his sleeves on that jacket he's wearing, it kicks ass, and I want to try that on something because holy shit, that's really cool. Having everybody run around during filming is definitely a choice, and it's utterly hilarious out of context. Just looking at the video for this makes me exhausted. I turned it into a game to see how many interesting figures I could find in the background, because there's quite a few of them. All of the people running around very close to their setup low-key gives me anxiety, because I would be super worried about people crashing into me, and there are a few times where that happens, as well as a few shots of people tripping and deliberately tumbling and eating shit on the ground. This video is absolutely pure chaos, and it looks like a lot of fun to film, and you should check it out. On the note of obscure bands or bands you haven't heard of, one of my mutuals, Claire, made a site that is a huge compilation list of bands, and if you're interested in looking at that, you should check it out, and I'll link it in the description. But I know she worked really hard on it. It's an ongoing project, and it's going to be good for preserving knowledge about musicians in the subculture, so I think it's a good thing to support. I don't want this video to go on too long, so I think this is a good place to call it for now. Like I said, I'll be making more videos like this talking about more bands or bands from specific parts of the world. There's a lot I wanted to add in and talk about, but I didn't quite have the time for it. If you know anything interesting about any of these bands, you should share with the class in the comments, or if you have a band that you feel like deserves to be talked about in this series, you should mention them.